Hello friends, welcome back to another video in the series I'm calling My Favorite Photographers. This one is about Margaret Bourke-White. For those who have heard that name, this picture is probably the most popular image that would come up if you did a Google search or um, most people probably think of her when they see this picture, they actually know who this is. The funny part is this isn't a photo she took because obviously she's in the photo, but it kind of exemplifies the, I guess, sheer bravery, sheer adventurism of who this person was, who Margaret was, and the lengths she would go to take different pictures and see things her way, right? So. Margaret was born in 1904 in the Bronx, and she grew up in New Jersey for the most part. Um, you know, Pretty regular life, and eventually went to college at Cornell to study science. I think it was herpetology that I read, which is the study of reptiles. So but while she was there, she actually started taking industrial and architecture photography as kind of a hobby. And before she knew it, that hobby became more of a profession for her because it became a passion. She uh, started to work professionally well into the late 20s, and then was working for some magazines like Fortune and Life magazine. And Life is actually where I was first introduced to her. And I'll cover off on that a little bit more into the video here. But she was one of Life's four original staff photographers. And her photo, which is the one that I know her from originally, was on the cover of the first issue, which is kind of cool. I thought this photo was a fun photo of her kind of capturing some personality. But this is an image of her while she was on assignment in 1943. She actually is quite known for doing a lot of photography during World War II, and certainly was a pioneer in a lot of firsts that happened during the war there. She was probably the first to photograph in the Soviet Union, which was considered persona non grata at the time, especially for photographers and Americans. She certainly was the first for any photographer, but was the first woman actually to be authorized to fly on combat missions along with the military, which was kind of neat. Um, Her photographs of World War II were some of the most revered and celebrated, and she was uh, one of the first to actually document many of the atrocities of the concentration camps, which is, um, necessary but not always pleasant to see. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of war photography. There might be a couple of images coming here, but I'm going to focus on photos that I actually really enjoy of hers, my personal favorites. And we will start with this one here, which is actually a photo she took of that same detail of the Chrysler Building, uh, where everyone knows her from being out there on the ledge there. But this is one she took in 1931. I believe it's titled "From the 61st Floor of the Chrysler Building." You can tell it's an early photo simply because of the light bleed along the edges, the dark, uh, the real dark blacks here of the city and everything. So probably pretty early on into film photography, but she really preferred black and white over color, and so most of her photography, if not all, if I remember correctly, is going to be black and white. So, but I think this is a great image of such a unique detail of a building. Obviously, she was drawn to this building, and you will see why again here in a minute. This is another image she took of the Chrysler Building. This is the spire. What I love about this one is that I think it captures the quintessential Art Deco architecture of that particular building. It is a little bit of an angle, so I imagine looking up from, I'm guessing, probably standing on that ledge. Maybe not, but I can only imagine just maybe a bit of vertigo you feel if you were standing there taking this same picture today or the same picture yourself. But I do love the different tones of gray in here, the black, the really dark black of the triangles, and then the vertical lines that are kind of drawing your eye up toward the spire, which of course is just following the lines of the architecture, but it's still kind of a cool picture. I tried to find a true black and white photo of this one. It was a little hard to find, but I do love this shot of hers of the George Washington Bridge. This one was taken in 1933, and it really just kind of captures the scale, I think, for me, of this bridge. Just those vertical lines, and just the simplicity of the light and shadow of it all, and then the lines of the suspension here is really neat too. Um, it's I wouldn't say it's unique, but I think it's probably was unique for its time. I absolutely love it. I think that it's not completely centered, which I absolutely love. Which I think some people might tend to do, and as you can tell, it's not really showing the walkway. It's really just kind of highlighting the suspension, the cables, the scaffolding of the bridge, and I think that's beautiful. And this image I absolutely love as well. It's image probably one of the first to be taken from a moving plane above another plane above New York City. It was taken in 1939, and I she has probably a whole story around this one, but I just love how crisp it looks for that age. The This just was unheard of, honestly, and I think seeing those kind of images, and like today we would take it so much for granted that somebody just took a picture from an airplane of a city as they flew over, but the having the additional airline in the photo, and I have a buddy that would absolutely probably love to have this print framed in his office because he's an aviation guy. um, and I think that it almost romanticizes the time period. It's definitely a capture of that moment in time, and just thinking of like the wonder of someone to think of taking a picture like this way back then, right? Just when it was early on in aviation, and um, it wasn't. I mean, not too early. It wasn't the Wright brothers, but early on enough to where it to have that idea just blows my mind. This image, this one is actually kind of a special one for me. It is the Fort Peak Dam in Ohio. It was taken in 1936, but it was actually the first cover image for Life magazine. And why it's special to me was that was kind of my first exposure to photography and photojournalism. And my grandmother actually had a bunch of Life magazine at her house that I would just flip through for hours and hours on end. Um, and when I was younger, I wanted to be a life photographer. So I think that this had a bit of an influence on me. Um, Maybe even from an architectural standpoint, but certainly this image is indelible in my mind because that whole concept was such an inspiration. Switching gears a little bit here, we'll look at a couple of her more wartime photos next up. This one is from 1943, and it was essentially mission planning around some bombings that the U.S. was going to do. I think I find it fascinating because it does capture a moment in time, and just it's almost you could see this as a scene in a movie, or maybe movies borrowed from this kind of, I won't say cliche, but this kind of like this is very Doctor Strangelove for me. So I think it's surreal on some level, but in reality, this was capturing that moment where they were planning out where they were going to go, what routes they were going to fly over, and um, the funny thing for me is that the table that they're using appears to be some sort of game table or gambling table of some sort. So it was probably very much a whatever space you could have to use as a makeshift environment to spread out and just kind of get this done. And the intensity of the men just staring at what they're doing there. Um, and I don't know. I can't go too deep into it because again, the whole concept of this isn't really my thing. But I do find it to be a fascinating photo, and it's an example of some of the photojournalism that she did at the time that wasn't necessarily something gruesome, but it definitely captured the moment. This photo I find fascinating as well. It appears to be a photo that's in the middle of the action. It's bombing and anti-aircraft gunners in Moscow over the Red Square. Uh, I believe it was shot in 1941, and there's just so much going on here. Obviously, I think a bit of a long exposure to capture some of these lines here of, I'm guessing, airline or airplanes flying, or even maybe bullet trace. I'm not quite sure if this is lightning or some other explosion, fire, something. It's just it's chaos, right? And I think it kind of captures just how much was going on in that moment. You can see that the whole town is essentially out of power. So it's definitely a, a moment where people are probably scared, and just to have the bravery to probably, while there's booms and things flying and everything, just to have the presence of mind to not only take a picture but just stand there for a period of time for a long exposure. I think it's just wild. And so I think it takes a certain kind of person to actually do. Switching gears just a little bit here. This is a photo of some female welders that was taken in 1942. Obviously, during the war, men were off to war, and so women were picking up some of the jobs that men were doing before the war. And I think this was just a cool shot to me. I know we've all kind of seen the poster of the woman with the "she can do it," and but this was it. This was reality, and Margaret was able to capture uh, um, a photo like this, and I believe this is something that was published in Life magazine as well, and really just kind of uh, showing that the women are doing the job too, right, and supporting life back home. So kind of neat. I love the sparks. I love the moment of just all of those sparks flying everywhere, and I want to say she used a Rolleiflex camera. That was her favorite. So I can only imagine just being close enough to where she probably got some of the shower spray of the sparks there, which is a neat thought. Much like that last photo, this photo here is another one that I think that comes up a lot when you search for Margaret Bourke-White. But it's the last photo and then this photo. I think they both kind of capture some humanity, not just architecture or time of war or anything like that. And I think it really just kind of shows that she had an eye for photojournalism. The irony of a lineup of people waiting for food or help or something. I'm not quite 100% sure of the circumstance here, but this was I think it's titled "In the Time of the Louisville Flood." Was taken in 1936. So I can only assume that there's uh, uh, this is a line to get some help through a tough time like that. And having a line of people, especially people of color, in front of a billboard where it's talking about America, the American way being the highest standard of living, and it shows a white family. So there's a lot going on here. It's a great photo from a uh, storytelling standpoint. So I'm just going to give you a moment to let you sit with this one and look at it a little bit. And one final one to kind of round out the photos of Margaret's that I like. This one is the Jacinto Monument in Houston, and it was taken in 1952. I Again, being an architecture nerd, I think that this is kind of cool. It's from on high. It's from a helicopter, actually. So how much of a badass is that? But you can see that the cars below are very small. It's very sharp angle there with the monument. It's a unique angle, right? I'm sure a lot of people have taken an image of this from the ground, but this is kind of a unique image. I don't know that it's anything special composition wise other than that, but I do love that it's definitely not your normal image of something that probably hundreds or thousands of people have taken a picture of. And so to me, that's kind of cool. And I do like that there's a little bit of a light and shadow and grays and whites and blacks at play here. So again, it's just an image I love. As we kind of close out this video here on Margaret, I just had to include this image that I found while doing the research on her and digging a little bit more on her. Uh, this image, beside being a bit of a fashion icon here, um, this is her taking pictures at the Lindbergh baby kidnap trial in 1935. At least that's what I have found. So um, I love the image, of course, but I love that story or that connection. Being a huge fan of old Hollywood and a lot of like the scandal and all of that stuff. It reads very Hedda Hopper to me. This image, which is kind of cool on its own right, but I think that it what it does is it kind of exemplifies that she was able to photograph a lot of moments in time, a lot of events, a lot of people. She's been many places. She had her own file in the FBI under the whole Joseph McCarthy House Un-American Activities Committee for being suspected of communism because she had interest and beliefs and kind of exposing racial inequality and kind of highlighting the photo. I had a couple of photos back there, but um, yeah, just like people who are awesome, that's the kind of thing they have in their life. Like, they have interests, they have adventure, they have convictions, and they follow them. One of the cooler stories too, and I didn't include this photo for just because I'm not a big. I don't like the photo personally, but the cool story is there is that she was one of the last people, if not the last person, to photograph Gandhi while he was alive. She took a picture or a number of pictures of him in 1946 while India was trying to gain their independence, um, and published a story in Life that I think kind of turned the tide a little bit for India to gain their independence in 1947. Um, However, the photo she took that she's famous for is Gandhi in his sitting room with his spinning wheel. And I'm sure it was more just kind of a candid photo. It wasn't published at the time of the article. However, it did get published when Gandhi was assassinated in 1948. So um, just to, I guess, have that momentum in your life to be there for something like that. Um, and I don't want to say it was accidental, but it was like, that's crazy to me. Like, just to be like, oh yeah, she was the one that took the last picture of him or something like that. So anyway, that's just kind of a nice, neat little story. And we'll close out with one last photo of Margaret. This one was taken in 1964, later on in her life, during an exhibit of her work, and she was kind of being celebrated and talked about the photography she took through her life. The last part of her life, she was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 1953, and she semi-retired. She still took some photos then, nothing too much, but she focused on writing her autobiography titled Portrait of Myself. And then in 1963, she actually published this book, and Life had printed a celebration of her for her being a member of the staff for 25 years, and kind of celebrated her work and her photography and stuff. And I think that this exhibit is probably tied to that, or um, parallel to it, I would say. Unfortunately, in 1971, she passed away from Parkinson's, and um, then in 1972, Life magazine ceased publishing. So, kind of poetic. But that was Margaret Bourke-White. I hope you learned a thing or two. I hope you enjoyed some of the photography that I enjoy. But feel free to let me know if there's something I didn't get right, or if there was a photo that you liked that I didn't show. But go ahead and leave a comment below. Otherwise, appreciate you watching the video. Feel free to like, subscribe, share that, all the good things. And I will see you in the next one. Later.